what's cracking for you this week in the world of fan marketing?
So this week we're talking about crypto sponsors. We're going to be analyzing how it is impacting European sports and what really we can expect from this new type of sponsorships coming up.
So why has there been such a rise of crypto sponsors, specifically in Europe?
I would start from the base that, sports has received a big hit in the past year with no fans in the stadium and really harder ways to monetize the fan base. They had to really look for new activities and new ways to generate revenue. At the same time, something that we've seen happening during COVID is everything digital has grown a lot faster than anything else. We're talking about apps, we're talking about social media, we're talking about games or anything like that. So it's really a combination of, all this crypto world having a really, really hot and hype type of year, and also having more cash than other verticals because of the hype, because of the fact that they can raise money to different valuation, because there's really a race to make sure that you secure the right partners. So they really are in a good position with cash flow. The sports industry in general is being hit really hard, and what they really need to do is find a way to generate cash and cover operational losses. So if you're a sports team and you were used to making 100 million euros a year, and in 2020 you've done 20 million a year, now you need to figure out, okay, how am I going to bring back all the rest of the money so I'm not going to lose it? So it's incentivizing for the sports because they have a sponsor that has cash and that can really invest in creating that marketing. And it's really also interesting for the crypto space because they get to build some sort of authority by associating themselves with teams and sport leagues.
Absolutely. It would have been interesting to kind of see if we would have seen these things maybe with or without the pandemic, right? But I guess we'll never know. So on to the next one. You kind of touched on it a bit already just in your last answer there, but what is it specifically about sports and teams that lends itself well to crypto sponsors and kind of the benefits to both parties? You mentioned a little bit, but what is it about sports specifically that is, this avenue that lends itself better to crypto sponsors?
Yeah, I think that for the sake of crypto, one really good thing is being a hype topic. One really bad thing about being a hype topic is that there's a lot of trust issues. There's a lot of new companies coming out. There's a lot of new brands popping up. We might know Binance, Robinhood, but there's another 100,000 companies dabbling in that scene. So there's really no best ways than to gain trust from your users than affiliating with such strong brands like soccer teams and leagues. When you look at Europe, for example, and we're talking about brands like Roma, which is a 100-year-old club that has always been here, will forever be there, has its own connection to the city. That's really, really big for crypto sponsors in terms that they can, turn from being a new company with a lesser amount of trust in the society into being, wow, look at this company that is sponsoring this team that I've always followed for the last 30 years. They better be serious because I trust my team. So that's definitely the number one core reason why, all those companies are jumping into sports is affiliation and trust by association, which is a really great strategy. If you look back 20, 30 years, that used to be done by tobacco companies. Marlboro and Formula One and Ferrari used to be one of them. Then betting sponsors did the same, so Bet and Win and all these other companies in Europe. Now this is really the new vertical. As I mentioned earlier, they are in a really particular position. A lot of these companies have been able to raise money at really, great / surreal valuation, which puts them in a power position because they're walking into rooms where really they need to feel, as we mentioned earlier, losses, and they're walking in with, full pockets. So there's also some sort of power shift in there that can work. I think this is helping sports a lot because it's a fresh injection of new capital from a new vertical. It's helping cryptos a lot because it's helping them gain, a more mainstream, let's say, knowledge, a more mainstream audience. And overall, I think, the reason why they come into sports, sports fans have a pretty high affinity for risk. If you look at the European market, for example, sports betting is something that happens in every single country. Those are multi-billion-dollar companies, multi-billion-dollar businesses. So we're talking to a crowd that has already gone through the concept of risking money and at the same time has high affinity for a particular brand and at the same time is excited to really take new risks. So really a win-win both for the companies and for the sport, as long as the due diligence is done by sports team vetting their sponsors, which is a really big kind of pain point right now with some of the sponsors.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. There's so much kind of fan loyalty already, right? Soccer and football already has such that strength behind it. So to bring somebody in, right, that's great for the sponsors to already kind of have that like built-in trust, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're really, riding a wave of something that took hundreds of years to build, which is most of the sports brand, and just injecting their 2.0 version of what we should do really with sponsorship. So we're moving from having more traditional car tires brand, construction brands, food brands as sponsors to digital wallets, pay later technologies, and a lot of other new digital activities that we haven't seen in the past years. And like you mentioned, they really got a big push from COVID.
Right. Yeah. Does this let us reach fans in different ways? Is it easier to reach fans, when you go through crypto sponsorship? Or what about educating fans? Are there any barriers kind of there in this new kind of crypto space if some fans aren't really familiar, or is there any kind of hurdles there perhaps?
I think there's a really big challenge on the education side. There's the more Gen Z side of the audience that might be a little bit more familiar, even millennials. But we have to remember that sport in general, let's take the example of soccer and football right now. Football, we'll talk about it today. We have fans, most of the fans are probably over 40 years old, over 35 years old. Most of the fans are people that, have been following the team for 20, 30, 40 years. So there's definitely a lot of education that needs to be done. But I think step one to get the education started is you need to make people aware of the existence of these platforms. So I think we're at a phase one that is full awareness. Reason why brands in the crypto world are paying for sponsorship. There's many ways to do sponsorship. Not all of them need to be like super front facing at the center of the jersey or on the side of the jersey. Where we see crypto sponsors coming in, they really want that face time, let's call it, the value where fans can see them in the front. Just yesterday, we've seen socials.com signed a new deal kit with Inter, which has been with Pirelli for more than 20 years. And the deal is worth 20 million euros a year, which is something that even a bigger brand would question twice in a marketing budget, where they are in that position of really having the liquidity to go and sign this deal and get that full recognition.
Wow, that's huge. Really like shaking things up. Big moves.
Yeah, they need the money, so I'm happy somebody is injecting it.
Good. Okay, so we'll kind of shift gears a little bit, obviously, because here at Tradable Bits, where sports and music's a big side for us too. So are you seeing similar trends in music at all? Right, we had this initial kind of NFT craze, but it looks like maybe it's died down a bit. Are you kind of seeing similar trends, or maybe that's coming? But what can you speak a bit to kind of the music side on this?
Yeah, no, the music has been really one of the pioneers on this side of things. It's really common to have the creative communities being the ones pushing the boundaries for what can be done with the technology. So really music has played a key part. We've seen it at the top of the year. We had an NFT craze, like you were mentioning. It's funny because we wrote an article about it. And in the article, we mentioned that there's a high chance that we're going to see a spike, and then we're going to see some sort of adjustment of where really NFT should fit in a company's strategy, in a company's revenue stream, and so on. And I think this is what we're seeing right now. Everybody has an NFT strategy for next year. And when I say everybody, we're talking from Disney to Universal Music to Live Nation to whoever else in the space. There has been meeting in those companies talking about NFT 100%. So that I think is already a really big step forward for the music industry. Right. There's one thing that I would touch on the music, which is a bit different than sports. Music fans are not used to spend as much money as sports fans. The concept of consuming music is free today. I can open YouTube, I type J Balvin, I listen to the song. There's not really money exchange in between all of that. Where you compare with sports, where they've always had to pay for broadcasting, they've had to pay for TV channels, they've had to pay for tickets, pay for jerseys, pay for almost everything, as long as you're not pirating, which you don't support by any means at Tradable Bits. It's a bit different. We are talking to an audience that is not as oriented to spend money on an act as maybe a sports fan is. So there's definitely a lot happening in there. I think NFTs is one corner of it. I've seen a lot of companies building economies for the crypto economies for the creators. So things like you can create your own token, monetize your own IP. That's something that we'll see a lot more happening. I think we're a couple of years until we see this become really as solid as it is in sports today, for example.
Right. It'll probably kind of go through those waves, right? The peak craze and kind of, as you said, kind of adjust into everybody's strategy until it becomes more kind of commercial thing, right?
Correct, but it's great to see already that, everybody's building upon that as a strategy. Like if you're not doing it for today, you're definitely when you're looking at tomorrow, in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, everybody has an NFT strategy. Everybody's hiring head of NFT creation, technology, innovation, however you want to call it. So that's definitely exciting for the music industry. I hope to see more, even more and more interesting use cases for what can be done with, in general, blockchain-based technology.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll see some really interesting stuff coming out of there. So we'll kind of shift a little bit back to sports. So obviously in recent weeks, we talked about NCAA, NIL news, name, image, and likeness, right? And what a huge shift that was on that side. What do you think that this NCAA, NIL news means for sports and crypto sponsorships there? And is there a potential for kind of a huge opportunity there for these athletes? Now maybe we see these NCAA athletes doing NFTs, right? Do we think there's possibilities there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities. It's number one, I grew up in Europe in a different environment. There's not a lot of that college athlete type of thing. When I moved to North America, the fact that college player would not be able to really, monetize and use their name, image, right, likeness, and so on, for me it was pretty shocking. I didn't know there was a thing before I moved to North America. So in my opinion, is really, really long overdue as a statement from the NCAA and as a step ahead in where the sport is really moving. So I'm excited for all the athletes. I think they're going to have great opportunities. Crypto is definitely going to play a big role. If I'm not mistaken, I've already seen a couple of players signing partnerships with exchanges, different tokens, different NFT companies. I would urge, though, to say that, part of opening such a big, exciting market of creators to the world of sponsorship and partnership, is that, we need to be careful. Athletes mostly need to be careful who they're associating with. How is that getting, pushed towards the rest of the fans? How is that happening? Is the company really reliable? Is a brand that I want to associate myself or not? So I hope there's going to be, an openness in terms of being able to work with everybody, but also a really high level of scrutiny in terms of making sure that athletes don't get screwed, that brands don't use this new rule to really do something that is not in the best interest of the sport or the athletes themselves. I would add that, in my opinion, if somebody, an athlete, an artist, an act, a public image, a figure of any means, is able to attract hundreds of thousands of people at a stadium, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to monetize that skill. So I'm again really, really happy for them. I hope everybody's going to start to look out at more sponsorship deals, and at the same time make sure that they surround themselves with the right people to have a long-term career also on the sponsor side rather than only on the pitch.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I like what you said about kind of making sure athletes have the right things set up so no one's getting into trouble, right? Because it's new on the first side with crypto and NFTs. That's still kind of new for a lot of people too. And then the whole new world of NIL, right? So just making sure that there's that education and that kind of security piece for athletes, right?
Usually when there's new advancement like this, there's a short period of time where it becomes the wild, wild west. They've opened it, but it's not super regulated. There's no real idea and clear picture of what you can or cannot do. So this is really the risky period. I'm sure they're going to start to build a lot more requirements, and again, there's going to be a lot more scrutiny in which brands can engage in this type of activities. But overall, I think, again, it's long overdue. I think it's going to be great for a lot of athletes, and we are 100% going to see NFTs. If I was an athlete right now starting my career and I had confidence in my future, I would 100% start to sell digital goods today.
Okay. All right. Athletes everywhere. You hear that. Okay. That's the plan. All right, Michael. So we've got a final question here for you. What is your future forecast? What does the crystal ball say for the future when it comes to crypto and sponsorships? What do you think is next for us?
I think we're gonna see still a lot of growth in the near term future, meaning that sports are not gonna be able to regulate it as much because they need the cash. And really, it's a type of situation where I'm not saying you're gonna close some eyes, but you're gonna be a little bit less worried when you really are strapped for cash. So I think we're gonna see again a really big rise of crypto sponsors. In the past 2 days, two of the top three teams in Italy signed a crypto sponsor as a main shirt deal. So that's, I think it's indicative of where we're heading. I am mostly certain that we're going to get at a certain point where there's going to be added regulation for the particular vertical of cryptos, just like what happened with betting, which was allowed to be on jerseys and then it wasn't allowed to be on jerseys, and then you need to become more creative. So I think we're still on the rise. We're going to hit that peak in probably 2-3 years once the sports market reassesses from really what COVID has brought on the P&L. And then we're going to probably find the right place where crypto sponsors are going to sit for the next 5 to 10 years.
Right. It'll take some time to kind of get out of the COVID effects and then let everything kind of settle into where it's going to be, right?
100%. Right now, there are priority for every club is finding cash wherever they can, and if the cash sits there and it's not deteriorating a brand or it's not making a bad deal with anyone, they'll still follow that route 100% until it doesn't get regulated more.
Right.
Regulated more, I shall say.
Absolutely. Okay, Michael, that is all the questions I have for you. If there's anything else you want to add on the topic, but otherwise, that is all I have for you. And thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next week for the new This Week in Fan Marketing, where we always cover the most interesting news in music, sports, and entertainment. See you.